Hello, everybody. We are on Donner Lake again. I've got a lovely guest with me. Really excited to dive into this conversation and to be on the lake again. Our third episode from a Donner Lake doc. It's becoming a thing. I'm loving it. It may be one of the bigger reasons I don't want summer to end is because I'm loving these in-person outdoor podcast recordings. But I also am only thinking about now, like, doing every other winter podcast from the sled. So, all right, I'll be packing all this up and we will be like going out there. I don't know how, but that's just, I'm excited for those days too. But anyways, that brings me to my guest today, which is Amie Engerbretson, who is a Tahoe local, and also avid snowmobiler and advocate for climate. So that's another thing I'm really excited to talk about today because it's been a topic of conversation here on the podcast for a while. I mean, being in the outdoor industry related podcast, we talk about sustainability, climate, all the things happening in the world. But I think I really resonate with a lot that you particularly have to say with us having similar activities and hobbies that we enjoy, because it's hard not to feel like a hypocrite.
Yeah.
It's hard not to feel like a hypocrite when you like new gear, when you drive your car, when you do anything, right? But our main point on the podcast has been lately too, like, you can do what you can do. We're not all trying to be perfect and preach that like we have to live this insanely clean life, because there's a lot of things in this world that stop us from that. So we'll be diving into that, of course, today in this conversation. But first, as always, we're going to start, Amie, with you. And will you tell the guests a little bit about yourself? Obviously, we're here in Truckee right now, and you grew up in Truckee specifically, or Tahoe, or?
Yeah. I grew up here in Truckee, Tahoe. We lived in Olympic Valley until I was like 4 or 5, and then moved to Truckee. So I went to school in Truckee Elementary, Truckee Middle School, Truckee High. And growing up, my dad was a professional skier back in like the early 90s, kind of like through the early 2000s, like that kind of era. And then he transitioned and became like a photographer and videographer, centered in the action sports space, starting in the ski world, then branching out. And I grew up skiing avidly all the time. I skied for the first time when I was 10 months old, which sounds crazy.
Wow.
We have video of it.
I love that.
It's really funny. Because I look like a baby skiing.
Because you are a baby.
I was a baby. I walked really early, and my dad was super young when I was born. So he's like, let's put her on skis. But yeah, I grew up skiing. I ski raced, like a little bit. Like I did Mighty Mites and stuff at Palisades. And I ski raced until I was like 11, 12. But I actually, growing up, was like super into dance and ballet and all that. So right around that age, 12, 13, is when both ski racing and dance get very serious. And I actually ended up choosing dance, much to my dad's
dismay.
Yeah. But, and dance, I was just skiing, and I was always doing, like, I started doing ski photo shoots and stuff, like, with my dad at, like, 2 years old. Like, we would do, we'd make these, like, fake ski families and, like, ski in formation, like, 90s style for, like, Kodak commercials. And, I've been on, like, I think my first Palisades brochure cover, I was, like maybe 3 or something. But yeah, so always skiing, but I wasn't like kind of the typical professional skier life of like, oh, I've been doing this since I was like this, since I was a kid. I went to college, I went to school for dance, and I got a degree in media management. And then it was like in college, growing up somewhere like here, like Truckee, Tahoe, you're a teenager and you just take everything for granted, like every other selfish teenager, and you just want to get out of your small town. So then I got out of my small town. I went to school first in Arizona, then I transferred to Chicago. And I mean, the Midwest is gorgeous, and living in a city is what I always wanted to do. But then I was like, oh my God, Tahoe's the coolest place on earth. I got to get back. And I think also like with skiing, for us, like it wasn't something like we did as a family. It's like who we were.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Like that's a very big difference. So like to me, it wasn't like, oh, I'm really into skiing. Like I am a skier. And it wasn't until I lived somewhere, because people are always like, how did you go to school in Arizona and Chicago? Like the two places you're like never going skiing, basically. And it was like when I removed myself from Tahoe and from skiing, it's when I really like realized that no, I did like really love skiing. I loved where I was from. And like I had more of like a I think, like a disposition for skiing than dance. Like I worked really hard at dance, but like, and loved it. But I think I had a more natural talent for skiing. And I just hit up my dad right before graduating college. I was like, what if I like move home and move in with you? And I like start doing a couple comps and try to get sponsored. And I have like the only parent on the face of the world that's like, yes,
Yeah.
what a sick idea. Graduate college and become a ski bum.
Not that like, no, go get a job first,
Yeah.
or like you can do it for a year and then why don't you go use your degree? Yeah,
No,
I
dad
love
was not
that.
like that. Dad was stoked. But yeah, and like it, somehow I think I had an interesting perspective going into my ski career because I watched my dad's ski career.
Mm-hmm.
I watched him work really hard at it. I know that having a kid made it harder. And I watched him like struggle with being a great skier, but not being great at like marketing himself and thinking that being a good, maybe the best skier was like enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went into and also like growing up in Tahoe, like being a professional skier, which is like, that is what I do. I'm a professional big mountain skier somehow, years later, still working. But I've seen so many people either try to become professional skiers and fail, or become professional skiers, have it not lead anywhere, not know what to do when their career's over. Like, I think I had a very like not glorified vision of what being a professional skier actually looks like, because being a professional athlete is tough. And being a professional athlete in quite a niche sport is also tough, a sport that's super dangerous. And then being a woman in that space is just like so many compounding factors there. So I think I went into my ski career basically like assuming it wouldn't work, but it would be fun to like try.
Yeah.
Do it for a couple years. I'm sure like I could never make enough money to live. And, but then like, I think like still at this point, whatever, I mean, probably got my first sponsor, like my first gear flow sponsor was Sessions. I don't know if you remember that brand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I had a jacket from
Yeah.
them. I remember it specifically like red and white.
They were like sick. Like Shane was sponsored by them for a sec. JT was sponsored by them. JT Holmes. Like, and so I got my first box of gear with Sessions, and I was probably 22, 23. So I'm going on like a 15-year career at this point, almost.
Well, and would you say at this point, like the life of a professional athlete in action sports has evolved so much since like the 90s, right? There was a booming time, and around that time that you're actually reaching out and trying to do this is about the time that I'm aware of where it was a little bit hard. There wasn't as much money as there was like earlier. Were you on the downside of that, or was it still like easier at the time? But like, again, maybe the downswing, or how hard was that to even?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I almost feel like the heyday for professional skiers in the free skiing space was really like actually like the early 2000s.
Okay.
And so when I came into the space, I graduated college in 2010. So I'm trying to like start getting sponsored around 2011, 2012. Anybody from Tahoe remembers that was a sick year.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because in some ways I think it was a little bit of a downturn in the ski industry. However, as a woman, there was no up period for women yet.
Right. Yeah. Good
like
point.
when I was first competing back then, it was the Free Skiing World Tour, and it was I was trying to compete in that time frame where the Free Skiing World Tour and the Free Ride World Tour were combining. But at that point, like I remember one of the competitions that I did as a woman. So as a man, if you won that comp, you won 10 grand. First place prize purse for a woman in the same competition on the same venue was $800.
Oh,
like that's an outrageous disparity.
God.
So
$800,
right, totally, yes,
to 10,000.
right. Like that's a wild disparity.
That is insane.
That's not even enough to like cover your entry fee and your hotel room for 2 nights.
That's barely travel for people.
No,
I'm
it wouldn't cover it at all. Yeah. And so like in some ways it was like a decline. I think it wasn't even a decline in money. It was more people are coming into the space when it's like when it comes to men. But women were still, very much like the height of tokenism, the height of only space for one, very low budgets for women. Women's product was not very good, not valued either. And but yeah, but the same thing that was happening, like Instagram was basically just hitting mainstream. Like in 2010, Instagram was happening, but it was for like those tech people that like also had Twitter. And we were like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, like we don't have this. And so it was when that was also like social media marked a massive shift in how all professional athletes operate,
Right.
especially in my space. So like my career has been like definitely dominated by that presence as well. Like social media, you know, in a lot of ways shaped my career. And it's frustrating. I think you can understand as like a woman in any space. Like I feel like there's this brands immediately saw a number of followers as like an ROI, which is what a company has always wanted for an athlete.
And we're still fighting, honestly.
And we're still fighting
like
on
that
it.
is still something, I mean, with me and what I do, that I'm like, it doesn't, how can I convince people, even with freelance marketing and showing my boss or something, that's like, the numbers don't always accurately represent, because
They can
people
be
aren't always
falsified.
taking like action.
Totally.
More people are like lurking and watching than taking action, and you cannot like quantify.
I think it's something that is an indicator
Mhm.
of value or ROI, but it's not a foolproof. And I think like in all spaces, ROI on athletes has always been something hard to prove. Like how many pairs of skis am I actually selling? Like we do know like Michael Jordan's selling a lot of Air Jordans because they're like have his name on them. But like in general, it's always been hard to prove. And I understand that social media followers and engagement numbers are a piece of that puzzle, but they're also numbers like especially in like the mid like 2015s could be wildly falsified. Like I think people are a little wise to like buying followers and likes now, but they're still doing it.
Absolutely.
They're still running algorithms. They're still running bots. And there was an era of like companies purchasing bots for their athlete teams and things like this. So, you know, it's been a battle. And as a woman, I think it's been easier. Like the battle of like the athlete versus the influencer thing has always been something for me. Cause it's like on some level, I hate what social media has done to my sport, to athletes, to sponsorships, to media, to mental health, what it's doing for like lives of young women and how I'm a part of that. And social media has probably enabled my career to last quite a bit longer. And it's opened up a different revenue stream. And more than anything, the thing that like, I think is actually a gift as an athlete at all, but especially as a female athlete is like, at least now with social media, like I have a say and control over like what people see and know of me.
Yeah.
Versus like pre-social media, like your story was always being told by some editor, some writer, some marketing person, typically a man. So like it's kind of a double-edged sword for me, like hating social media and also acknowledging that like my career probably wouldn't work without it. Even though I hate and I try to like do the balance of like the influencery stuff versus like the stuff I care about. Like I kind of hate that like I put out a 6 ski clip, nobody cares. I put out a clip of like me getting dressed, like slightly sped up to a Selena Gomez song, and it goes crazy.
Right.
I'm like, why do we care about this?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I mean, the dancing trends, I actually like that, like tracks with my
with your
with my
upbringing
hobbies.
background.
But so I think it's just been it's interesting. I still think every day I'm a little bit shocked that like I still have a functioning ski career.
Yeah.
That being said, I still think like I'm growing as a skier and have more to give and offer than I ever have, even though the industry still looks at like a aging female athlete as like kind of close to expiring. And I feel that pressure a lot, but also hoping like I was in the wave of making space for more women, making space for women to get paid more, making space for all women's projects. So maybe I'm still, there's women like Elise and Ingrid that are showing how to be a mother and an aging female athlete, but still valuable. And like, I feel like they are kind of paving that way. But then like my generation of athlete is like solidifying it.
Yeah.
Like I'm still, there's still work to be done. Right. Like.
Well, and there's always gonna be, it feels like, unfortunately, because it is the waves that just go up and down. And I feel those waves are harder for women. But I think that I love that what you said about our generation kind of solidifying that, because I just had a conversation a few weeks ago with Julie Bacon of the Mothership Collective.
Cool.
And like so many things like that are popping up, and so many more women are speaking up in these spaces, athletes of all kinds, about like, I can still do this while pregnant, after pregnancy, with my child, and all the things. And we are the ones who are showing the younger generation, and then also getting those children which obviously lots of those are going to be young girls too, showing them that way at a very young age. And I think that's coming from, us, especially who did have the support growing up that wasn't as widespread, but now we are widespreading it, that like these girls are going to have so much more access to the things that like we didn't. And so it's just that snowball effect, but seeing more women get out there doing the things with their kids or through pregnancy, or just talking about it in general, whether like kids are in your future or not. It's still the conversation of just aging women, menopause, the things we go through. Like we're still human beings. We don't just like curl up and, go into the kitchen. No, we can still do all these things through these different stages and ages of life. And the more we're out there doing it and showing it, then hopefully the more that brands and things and people do recognize that there is value at all stages of life, because with the overall goal or mission too, especially in the outdoors or sports and athletics, is like being healthy and movement, right? So like going back to just kind of core values in it all, and when people can connect to that. But that's, a whole other conversation of brands and bigger companies really staying true to some core values that I'm sure
which they're
you've
trying,
seen a lot.
but it's still like intimidating. Like I think that I don't feel super confident or secure in like what my career is going to look like moving forward, and I still feel pressure from brands and from just people. Like, oh, aren't you done? And I'm like, I'm the best athlete I've been. Like, but skiing is tough because it's a lifestyle sport, so you want to be able to do it forever, and it's quite dangerous, like the skiing that I do. So like, do I, even with or without a kid and motherhood, like the mental disposition to continue to take on risk. And we've seen a lot of female athletes lately being just really honest about the toll that like this sport takes on their bodies. You look at someone like Kate Zelliff, Janelle, JY from the Blondes, like I don't know, just being open about like the realities of the sport too, and not glorifying it too much, I think is good. But I also think like we're in a world where all of that is value, especially in a sport like skiing, where it is a lifestyle sport. It is something people do forever. Like that's the goal. The goal is to ski like until we can't walk, till
absolutely.
we're 80, 90, whatever. Like that's the goal. Like it's not a youth sport,
I love that.
So why would all of our athletes representing the sport only be youth?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that's like, again, the story that everyone should want to sell is that the goal is to do this as long as we all can. And okay, so since you moved back, you became a professional skier, still are. And I'm assuming once you moved back full time, like, did you ever leave again during your career and like try to live anywhere else as you were skiing professionally? Or was it like Tahoe's the home base and you're traveling obviously for competition or shoots or things like that?
So like the first 2 years I moved back, one was a good year, one was a great year. Then we went into 3 drought years.
Yeah, that's when I moved here.
3 years in a row, KT22 at Palisades did not open. And so you can't really be like trying to be a professional skier when there's no snow. So in that time, I ended up spending a lot of time in Utah for the first winter, just kind of couch surfing. And then I ended up kind of like renting a place out there. And so for a long time, I kind of split my time between like here in Utah. I ended up meeting my now fiance, Todd Laguerre. He's from Park City, lives in Utah. And so like we actually have a spot in Salt Lake still. But now it's kind of shifted where Utah is such a problem with the traffic and the crowds that we have stopped spending as much time there and we're spending more time here. But the reality is for like, especially the last like 6 to 8 years, so much of my winter is traveling, and I've had the goal the last couple winters to like try to be here more. And that's a goal I want to work towards. I'm already getting my winter schedule sorted out and it looks like I'm not going to be here at all.
Oh no.
And like, that's the sad thing is like, I spend so much time on the road going to all these amazing places and really Salt Lake, like Salt Lake has great snow, but it's easier to travel from there, like driving. Cause like you said, I sled a lot. So a lot of times I'm bringing my snowmobile. So I'm driving really far and Salt Lake's just way closer everywhere. Definitely can't check a snowmobile. I also like to travel with like a million pairs of skis.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah, I spend like a ton of time on the road, but I still trying to get to a place to be here more. I mean, it's a little fickle in Tahoe. Winters can go seems like they're all or nothing. Like I would just love like a couple medium winters in a row would be great.
Yeah, right.
But it's definitely a goal I have like in the next few seasons is to just continue to try harder to be here and ski here more.
When did you transition from competing into just, are you still filming, or is it like filming for production companies? Because that's also a big shift we've seen in this industry, is like how big these big films were versus now, because of things like the evolution of social media and whatnot, that a lot of athletes are just making their own content for their own channels. What does that look like for you today in that scheme of things?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I actually didn't compete that much because I was in this weird era where the two comps were merging, and it was kind of like a weird no man's land for the couple years it would have been like my peak competing years. I also didn't prefer competing that much, and I wasn't getting a lot of support from my sponsors to like go compete. So I kind of transitioned to like shooting and filming like right away.
Okay.
And was immediately like getting covers of magazines, and because that was very important and big deal back then. I think to me it still is, but it's less valued now. And then I got in with Warren Miller pretty quickly, and I filmed with Warren Miller a bunch, did some projects with TGR. But for me, I kind of have always been the person in my entire career that's not really like waiting for the phone to ring. Like I'd rather like make the calls.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
When I did go to college, the degree I got is in media management, and I emphasized in producing and directing. So it would only make sense. Like had I not been a professional skier, I would have like gone into the production world of some sort for sure. And so just like applying that to skiing, I feel like I started making fairly like robust personal projects like from the get-go. Like even my early days of Warren Miller, you know, you film with these companies and you put all this effort in, and these brands put all this money in, but then they use like 10% of the shots, and inevitably they never use the shots or the lines that you are the most proud of. So I would go to Warren Miller, I'd say, hey, like, what's all this footage doing just sitting on a hard drive? Like, can I make a little edit? And so I would immediately start making like edits out of my leftover footage, which then transitioned into like, I think my first like more robust personal project was one I did called Snow Pony, about the first year I got a snowmobile.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like the snowmobile is the narrator. Like the snowmobile character is like this crotchety old man, like narrating his experience of like a winter with like a novice, like skier girl sledder. I thought it was very charming, but I don't know if anyone else felt that way.
I love it.
But it was, and that like, I've done a lot of personal projects now, and that's cool because I produce them. A lot of times I'm the one negotiating and figuring out music rights, and like doing basically the full scope of an entire production company as like one person, while also being the talent. But I think a lot of people are doing that more now. And it's cool because people have their own expression. I think it's hurting the bigger media formats because I think that budgets are getting spread thin, and there's still a magic to a big ski movie with like all the most talented people in one place. As there's very few athletes that like can really carry a big movie by themselves, both from like a talent perspective, but also like a charisma and personality perspective. So I definitely do miss the bigger films, and it's still like what I focus on. I am filming and still shooting photos, still trying to get published in magazines. I know it's like a dying thing, but I still love it. Like Powder's running a photo of me from this year, and I'm like stoked.
Oh, cool.
And, but then I still am trying to sometimes film with bigger companies, sometimes do my own projects, do a lot of projects for brands, like doing more and more like skiing camps. Like I hosted this camp at Palisades this year, a WOW like signature camp with me. So it was like a 3 days skiing camp at Palisades with me.
What
which
does
I'm gonna do again.
WOW? Is that an acronym?
WOW, Women of Winter.
Okay, I figured it was something like women something, but I wanted
Women
to make
of
sure.
Winter.
Okay, cool.
And we're doing another WOW Women of Winter camp this year.
Awesome.
So I don't know, just it's always a lot of moving parts. Right now in the summer, this is the first summer where I do have a very small project coming out this fall. So my post-production has been less intense than the last few years. But so I'm also in this whole phase of like pitching projects to brands right now. So I have like a big project I'm pitching. I have some smaller projects I'm pitching, and like, it's kind of, it's nice to not have as much post-production because as you mentioned, you didn't mention it directly, but we were talking about hypocrisy and climate advocacy. And I guess that can segue into like my work with POW, but it was 2 years ago now, 3 years ago. Can't even remember because it was such an intense experience. The biggest like culmination of my self-produced projects was this project called The Hypocrite, which was made in association with Protect Our Winners. The funding for the film has started with a grant from Protect Our Winners. And it's a film that, I mean, essentially it's a climate documentary, and I was the director. So obviously directing a climate documentary was a little outside of my lane at the moment, and a massive challenge, and definitely one of the hardest things I've done to date so far in this life and in my career. But it's a film that really explores this topic you're talking about of like perceived hypocrisy of like caring for the planet, maybe even advocating for the planet while still like pursuing a life, you know, like in my case, that maybe even burns extra fossil fuels. And like, does that make us hypocrites? And we explore imperfect advocacy and individual action versus systemic action and all those things. But I feel like that film was a huge thing that a big bite to chomp off.
Yeah. Well, just mentioning that it was more of like a climate advocacy, right? It wasn't just you telling your story of like, I love snowmobiling and skiing and I do all this. So of like just personal story, I feel this way, but I care about this and whatever. But like truly talking about the intricacies of the, like you said, the systematic change versus like just independent. And there's so many facets to it, right? And I think that that's a huge part of the story where, this isn't just about you and your personal story. You're sharing just a lot more information in it.
There was like 14 characters in the film, including like scientists, Harvard professors, other athletes, snowmobilers. Like, I was definitely kind of like the main through line in the film, but it wasn't really a film about me, which at the end of the day, a lot of the ski films are ultimately just about the athlete.
Exactly.
Skiing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, or the athlete's story. So it was, and that was the first film where I was like the director of it.
You're a one woman show, huh? Like, that's amazing. Doing all of those things, wearing all of those hats, and I love that. Ever since you said what your degree was in school, I was like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, I see the through line here through all of this and what I know about you. So I'm like, yeah, your dad can't be mad ever, right? That like you decided, I want to go be a professional skier, because ultimately like you have tied in your knowledge from school into this career you've made of yourself. And you also said something earlier that was, you don't want to sit and wait for the call, you make the calls. And that's something I love so much, because I have just thought about, I mean, I hate the phrase when people are like, oh, you're so lucky, right? Look, we are not going to sit here and say that we haven't had privilege that many don't. I think that, I mean, I've not to put words in your mouth, but I cannot say that I know that I have had privilege in how I grew up or the opportunities that I've had that some other people don't. But I also did work for everything that I have. It wasn't just given to me, and I went and made opportunities. Like, I firmly believe that opportunities are not just given out. You have to go and create them. And it sounds like you have a similar point of view, and especially, again, as women in the things that we're doing that aren't typically like women forward. Again, they're becoming more women forward. There's a lot more women doing all these things, but I think growing up having this mentality, that's just how I was and how I remain to be, that like, I don't know, I'm just going to go make it happen, not wait for it to happen or not wait for the call. And that's part of the mission of the podcast too, is like kind of inspiring others to do that at whatever age or stage of life you're in, because I think that it's something we have to do throughout life. And I definitely went through a stage of life where I was waiting a little bit more, kind of maybe in the, I don't know, like just being unsure of whether it was what I wanted to do or myself or whatnot. And I was saying this again in that episode with Julie Bacon, that it was like, I feel like I didn't really lose a piece of myself, but if I think of myself as a whole puzzle, that the shapes just morphed a bit, like changed, shaped themselves. But the whole puzzle's still there. I just had to like, kind of dig around a little bit and figure out how the pieces fit together now versus when, I was in my early 20s or mid 20s or something. But I just love that you're out there doing all of this, like, knowing you have the skills and the knowledge and you're just going to make something happen. and not wait for it to happen. And I think we all should do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of Hypocrite, though, and creating this film, becoming the director of this film of your own, where did your advocacy or involvement with Protect Our Winters start? What happened in your life or career that made you realize it was something that you cared deeply about and needed to like get your hands in there?
Yeah, I mean, I had kind of been aware of Protect Our Winters from kind of the beginning, growing up in Tahoe, living in Tahoe, knowing Jeremy, and I was kind of like one of those kind of like outskirt supporters, like, yeah, I'll go to a fundraiser, I'll donate a little money, I'll wear like a hat. But I was always kind of like of this mindset of like, well, but like being a climate advocate isn't for me. Like, I'm never going to be good enough for that. I'm not going to be a vegan. I'm never going to bike everywhere. I'm never going to stop riding chair lifts. And man, helicopters are cool. And I think I want a snowmobile someday. So obviously I could never be a climate advocate. Like, that was just my attitude. But I would also at the same time, like, see my world changing, have these like very low snow winters, these extreme weather events, then the fires. And I think it was, to be honest, like I think people are scared of politicizing things, but to me, the shock to the system that I needed to kind of get outside of my, individual fears was the 2016 election. And just, I had this faith that like our system worked and our system would figure it out and I would be supported. And as long as I was like a good enough person, I should probably just stay in my lane and ski and keep quiet and let everything go. And then the 2016 election happened and my system elected someone that really freaked me out. And I was really concerned. And I just kind of had this like flip of like, whoa, like maybe I do need to be involved in this, even if I don't see myself as political or sciencey or know what this is going to look like. I just had this moment of like that fear of the external was bigger than my internal fear in that moment. And so I just reached out to Pal. I was like, look, I don't know if I fit this mold at all, but like I feel called to do better. And what was cool about that is like Pal really like they have this way of kind of supporting athletes and learning and growing. And so they kind of opened up and like, this is available for anybody who wants to be part of the POW community is at any level, whether you're a volunteer, you're curious, you're an alliance member, you're an athlete, there's all these resources. And what I found with like the whole climate advocacy space was like, the more I learned, the more I felt empowered and realized that like I did have a voice in this, that I was suited to be here. I realized so much that like, being a professional skier, as weird as it sounds, like my whole life is about being quite scared and uncomfortable, but doing things anyway. And like, that's the exact skill I needed to engage in this new space. I had this platform, I had this voice, but I was terrified. Like the first time I went to DC with POW to like meet with Republican congressmen, I was as terrified as like standing on top of an AK line. Like literally I sweat through my like, whatever, like khaki
Power
pencil
suits.
skirt.
Yeah.
Major wardrobe malfunction. But like, I think that like the more like I knew, the more empowered I felt to like realize I had skin in the game. And I, POW talks so much about this thing called the outdoor state, which is if you gather up everybody in the US that participates in outdoors, you get this number, 175 million people are part of the outdoor recreation economy. And that economy is massive, first of all, generates a ton of money. Because like, I think of like, oh, I'm a skier. What am I going to do about the big, bad, rich fossil fuel industry? And actually, if you cast a wide net and gather up the whole outdoor industry, it's actually a bigger industry, GDP contribution-wise, than the fossil fuel industry, than the pharmaceutical industry. And like, we are talking a big net here, like hunting, angling, all the way to like skiing, trail, biking, camping. But I just learned that like, I had a voice in this, my community had a voice in this. There was untapped like power that like people didn't realize. And so I just felt that like, and I also learned that like, I learned so much about like how me as an individual and living an examined life, doing the individual things I could mattered, but the real difference was in systemic changes. And that's like massive overhead. Like I realized, I mean, one of the things we talk about in the film that was like a massive eye opener for me is I got to meet Amie Engerbretson. She is a professor of the history of science at Harvard. She wrote this amazing book, Merchants of Doubt. I got to meet her through POW. Watched her movie, her book was turned into a movie. And basically she discovered that the fossil fuel industry had hired the PR company that the tobacco industry used for years to peddle misinformation about the effects of cigarettes. And this exact same PR company had gone and like basically put together a tobacco industry playbook for misinformation campaigns and peddled it to the chemical industry, all these different industries, one of them being the fossil fuel industry. So this idea of the individual carbon footprint is actually a term and an idea that was created by people paid by BP Mobile, like by the fossil fuel industry. And to me, that blew my mind. And it's quite smart, because what is the most effective way to control human beings? Guilt. So if we make it feel like it's so much your problem, you are going to be so shrunk in that guilt that you're not going to look at what the real problem is. And like one stat that I show in the movie that really illuminates this is you would have to live 58 million lifetimes as an individual to emit in those 58 million lifetimes what Shell emitted in 1 year. So even that kind of scaled, like I can stop driving. I can become vegan. You could do that. This whole town could do that. We could eliminate heli skiing from the face of the world. We could eliminate skiing from the face of the world, and we're still going to deal with climate change.
Yeah.
And so like, to me, once I learned that, it expanded my growth potential. And I just felt called that I was like, if my community could know this, and like, again, not like another climate change movie by Patagonia about some vegan climber.
Yeah.
No offense, that works. But like, I wanted to make a film where I just wanted to like address the elephant in the room. And like, I'd been called a hypocrite in DMs on Instagram for years. And I was like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Are we hypocrites? And that's why I was like, let's make a snowmobile climate change movie. And people are like, what? But the reality is like, there's also like such a misnomer about snowmobiling in that like, I mean, we don't use that much gas, to be honest. I use less gas on a big day snowmobiling than I do sitting in traffic getting up Big Cottonwood Canyon or Little Cottonwood Canyon. But again, it's also not about that. And I feel like the snowmobile community has been ostracized, and like there's such a rift in the outdoor state in general that like what I love about the snowmobile community is the camaraderie, the help, the lack of like condescension. Like I was a new snowmobiler, and these like lifelong like sled necks would roll up, and I'd be, in some tree well.
And they'd be getting you out.
And they're getting me out, and they're helping me. And so I was like, if we could come to any problem, like the way a group of sledders like approach a stuck snowmobile with positivity, like gumption and teamwork.
Yeah.
I was like, these people need to be part of this conversation. And we're wasting our time fighting about like who gets to use the forest or who's using slightly more or less carbon, when like we should be working together, because like who cares who gets to use the forest if the forest is going to burn down?
Yeah, exactly. And that is, there's so many touch points there for
Sorry,
me.
just all the way off.
No, I love it, but it's just like, it resonates with me so deeply with what you said from the beginning about not feeling like, almost like you were enough or had enough of a voice or could make enough of a difference in anything.
What it was is I didn't feel like I was perfect enough.
Yeah.
And I was never going to be perfect. And that's, you mentioned this in the beginning, there's this idea of perfection in any walk of our lives hinders progress.
Yeah.
And like, if you're constantly striving for perfection, you're not getting anywhere. So like, that's this imperfect advocacy people throw around all the time. It's like, this is not a perfect solution.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be perfect, but that doesn't mean we don't get to be part of the solution.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I love that. Imperfect advocacy, because it's incredibly hard to live. What is that? What is perfectly? Again, in our society, it's really hard to do that, to really do anything that doesn't emit any carbon emissions and
even if you did,
it
wouldn't make a difference.
Exactly.
Actually, if Shell's still going to be,
there's so many more bigger things that need to happen. And I mean, that's where it's like, we can only do what we can do. We're not telling everyone they need to be perfect. And perfectionism stops us from a lot of things in life, like you just mentioned. It could be why people don't take the leap into starting a business, making a life change, anything, because they're like waiting for everything to be perfect, and it's just never going to. But I felt that way a lot too. Like, okay, well, I live this lifestyle. We'll just be deemed a hypocrite if I am standing up for this or that. But it came to the point around that same time, 2016. And I think, again, for a lot of women specifically, it hit because we literally saw the rug being pulled out from under us and going back into like, hold on a second. Like, things I never thought in my life would change are changing. How are we going literally backwards in time?
Yeah.
And I think that opened the doors and eyes for a lot of us of like, it is time. Actually, we do need to take action. So it's been in my mind since 2016. Definitely like didn't take a lot of action there, but was paying more attention. I feel like this last year though was like the straw that broke the camel's back of like, this is fucking crazy. And I no longer really, care what people might call me or think of me for saying, well, you can't stand here because you also stand over there or something. And with the outdoor panel that you came to in Truckee, I mean, I approached Katie Hawkins with doing that because I was like, look, I love my snowmobiling community and I love the backcountry skier community and I love the fucking snow. So like, why can't we come together? Why does it always have to be just a battle against like motorized users versus non-motorized users for access when if there's no access at all, no one wins.
Well, but this is what, like, this was the plan. This was the plan, is to get us so busy pointing fingers at each other and figuring out how to blame each other so we feel less bad that we're not all collectively pointing fingers at the actual problem. Right? Like, and it's crazy how effective it's been. And like, to me, it's just the hope that the more we can all just see the bigger picture, we can like lay our fingers down a little bit at each other and then collectively point the finger where it needs to be pointed, you know? Like we should be able to continue to live a modern life. You know, we as citizens, we've demanded clean air, clean water, food, shelter, the occasional cold beer. Yes, maybe like some recreational fun. We never demanded those things be delivered in a way that kills our planet. Right? Like that's not the deal we were making because that was hidden from us for a long time. And so we still can have those things. Like we just need to redirect resources to figure out how to continue modern life. We don't all need to stop doing things and do less. It's about trying to do more so that we can continue like the modern life, not shut it down. And I believe in human ingenuity. And I believe that like the transition into renewable energies is the next industrial revolution. It's going to open up the next phase. Like people kind of get bogged down in like, well, EVs aren't perfect and batteries aren't perfect and nothing's perfect. And like the reality is if we look back, you know, when cars combustion engine first came out, horses were still a much more effective, reliable mode of transportation. In the beginning. And like, I believe in human ingenuity and I believe in like the need to empower human ingenuity rather than stifle it to maintain a status quo, which is what's happening.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just the more we can talk about these things and have these conversations, and this ties into exactly what I just talked about with M. Hayes of Articles in Common, where it's like we as the consumer or public have been the one that like, the ones who are held accountable. And we're kind of told that the onus is on us. Like we have to make the right choices and do this and that. But it's like the people above, the bigger people, the bigger brands, companies, organizations, whatever, where's their accountability? Like, why is it only falling on us? And especially when those differences don't even move the needle. But what these people can be doing moves the needle. And the onus still falls on us because we have to hold these people accountable. But it's in a different way than like, just saying that it's like our fault or our job. And I think, just having these conversations more, knowing that you don't have to be perfect to take action. That's been a mission of the podcast for like this last year for sure, is like, that's why I'm just trying to get involved in things. Like, I don't have to know everything.
No.
I don't have to be perfect, but like, I might as well shoot my shot and try and also show other people who might resonate with me and my story or whatever it is, that they can also be a part of that narrative. And like I said, that's just the most important part, is having the conversations and people realizing that they can do something. Because I think so often we get, paralysis by analysis. There's too much going on. We're overwhelmed. I get it. No one wants to watch the news and hear about it. But
though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I get that intimidation and that fear, because I felt that. But like when I realize where that fear is coming from, and then I also apply, like, it's easy for me to paint this picture as a professional skier. Like, I do scary things, because I care about them. But as outdoor people, one of the things we do as outdoor people is we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations and challenge ourselves because it's something we care about, because we want to climb that mountain, because we want to complete this section of trail, because we want to camp at this lake. And like that grit and tenacity can be folded into this kind of thing where, yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's challenging, but we want it. It's good. It's how we continue our lifestyles. And like, you don't need to be perfect to have a voice in this.
Yeah.
If you care about the outdoors, you got a seat at the table.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
in this.
Exactly.
You know, that's the only prerequisite. Do you care?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
Like,
I love that. The only prerequisite is like
you care?
You care a little bit at all, right? Like you want to go
Which
enjoy those things.
everybody does, and that's what I found. Like, I had this really affecting experience. My first trip to DC. With POW, we were lobbying on behalf of some climate policy, and we were going into a meeting with a Republican congressman from Florida. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about with this guy? This is going to be horrible. I have nothing in common with a Republican from Florida. Ugh. And so we go in and immediately, like, kind of the thing that like we've learned to kind of start like a little bit of like a mellow playing field is just talk to people about what they like to do outside. You know, because there is this like caricature of like a granola hippie climber is like the outdoors man. And so we kind of started about like talking about what we do outside. Oh, I ski in Tahoe. And he's like, oh, that's cool. Like I have a boat in the Everglades and I love to do this stuff with my family. And I could see in this Republican from Florida, his eyes, the way he felt about how he engages with the outdoors is the same way I feel about how I engage with the outdoors. So it doesn't matter that we engage differently. We both have the same value from it. We both care for different reasons, different modalities, but we care. It adds to our life. We cherish it. And like, that's the literal common ground that like we need to go into this situation. Like not fighting, like, oh, you use a snowmobile, oh, you ski, whatever. Like that's stupid.
Yeah.
It's distracting. It's petty, right? Especially in the face of what we're up against.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, I love all of that. And like I said, where the conversation has just been going on the podcast lately with just talking about these things in that imperfect way of really just trying to raise the voices and my overused phrase as of late of like rising tides raise all ships. But it's like, it's so true. We have to just like keep moving forward, use our voices where we can, do what we can. Are we all going to go out there and make our own movie? Probably not.
No.
But it doesn't have to be that, right? Not at all. You went out and did it anyways, not knowing, like stepping into that role for the first time in that capacity and just continuing to use your voice in the ways that you can. Here, listening, sharing these conversations with other people if you're out there listening, just to get other people to realize, like, again, just taking a little bit of action can make such a big impact.
I feel like with these like waves coming through, it's making me think of like all people have like a sphere of influence, a pond of influence. So like if you throw a rock in your pond, where do those ripples go?
Yeah.
Where do they touch? And it's not about just you shaming yourself for your individual actions. It's like, how can you affect like where you work engages in the system? How can you get involved in your local politics is one of the most important things you can do. We all live in these little towns, big cities, whatever, with these small jurisdictions where we can show up to commissioner meetings. We can show up to town council meetings. We have a group of friends. We can make sure that they vote. We can make sure that, you know, there's think of those ripples of like, are we all professional skiers that can go make a movie? Of course not.
Yeah.
But there's so many ways we as individuals can like touch our systems, and like all of change throughout history comes from a small group of people dedicated to making change.
Yeah.
Like the system is theoretically designed for us. So we need to continue to put our input into it.
Absolutely.
And like find that touch point, you know?
Yeah. And with this particular conversation, it's like, this is a massive group of people. And like you said, especially with the outdoor industry and what it contributes to the GDP and just like the wide net it casts across like hunters, outdoors, fishermen, all of that. I'm trying to involve a lot more in that too. That's another touch point with the podcast. It's like with the outdoors, talking about these things, not just like, okay, yeah, ski, snowboard, snowmobile, mountain biking, action sport kind of thing, but like
full outdoors.
And people who also live in cities and their outdoors is a big park.
Yeah.
Like really, you know, dropping any kind of elitism. Like you're getting outside. That looks different to anyone. Again, like you mentioned with the congressman in Florida, like your modalities may look a lot different, your interests may look a lot different, but the value it brings to your life is similar. Yeah. It's the same. It's like, that's the point. And we don't need to care about what it looks like for us. We just need to know that the value that it brings to our life, and that should be enough to like, carry us to making some kind of step or contribution. And it could be so simple. Like I said, sharing articles, having a conversation with just like a friend, like, you don't have to attend those town council meetings, but if you can, like, sure as fuck do. Like,
Yeah.
I keep saying and putting out there into the world that like, I'm going to run for town council. So
Same, let's do it
like,
together.
yeah, absolutely. It's just like, cause I'm at the point of like, whatever, man,
Yeah.
again, might as well shoot the shot, because I don't see what I want to see. I don't see the representation I want to see. So why don't I just go like try and be it? And if it's not me, I don't care. It's not about like going out and winning, but like to show other people like, no, this is what we're looking for. And we'll get the right people in there. And it's just, again, really reminding myself of that. It's imperfect, and that's okay.
I think people are really scared of politics.
Yeah.
And like, unfortunately, like political will is how we solve this problem.
Mhm.
It doesn't get solved by recycling. It doesn't get solved by becoming vegan. It gets solved by political action.
Mhm.
And one thing that helped me, because I didn't grow up in like a super political household, I would never see myself as very political, but someone defined politics to me one time as politics. The definition of it is anytime you make a decision with 3 or more people. By that definition, we all have experience in politics.
Absolutely.
Numerous, like so much experience with politics. And so like, to me, it's also about like destigmatizing politics
Yeah.
as well, which
Mhm.
is to do that, you have to engage with it.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
it's not as scary as it seems. Like calling a senator, writing a letter, showing up to a town council meeting, voting, number 1.
Yep.
Vote all the way down the ballot, number 2. But like, try to start engaging in it. And it's like anything, the more you do it, the less intimidating it is. You don't go out and start skiing on a double black diamond.
Mhm.
You start in a green circle.
Yeah.
And then you progress up. So you don't start by like, oh my God, I'm going to run for president.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But you do start like, I'm going to like sign up and write this like pre-written email to my senator.
Yeah.
Or, I'm going to call my senator and I'm going to just read this script that has power on the website. And I'm going to realize I'm just talking to another human
Mhm.
being. Like these politicians are just people
Mhm.
that we've loaned our power to.
Yeah.
So we should continue to engage with them. And it is scary. I don't want to like
Downplay it.
that. It's
Yeah.
scary. However, we can do it.
Yeah.
Like,
100%. And I mean, thinking about it in that way of like 3 to 4 people, that small group, that can make it, like politics, it could be as simple as a local like board, an organization that has a board, like getting involved in that just to start learning how to kind of interact with people in that way, board of directors type decision making, how that process
I
might
joined
work.
the board of my HOA for this exact reason. A,
Yeah.
I was concerned about how my community was being run. B, I felt it would be a good experience if I ever wanted to run for town council.
Yes.
C, it was like a way to touch the system that I'm a part of. I'm giving these people my money every
Yep.
month.
The most local like
Yeah.
community that you're in. Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've thought about too. We don't have a lot going on in our HOA, but I'm like, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
it's joining in with the system. And,
Exactly.
you can complain about these systems or you can get involved with them. And yeah, just trying to destigmatize that a little bit too.
I love that. I know you said you didn't grow up with in a big political family or background or anything. My dad was always like a hardcore advocate because he's a union guy.
Uh-huh.
But so I had a little bit of that just in my mind, but really it was just like watching this like laborer go to work every day for his union and always fight for something that was broader than him. It wasn't just like his benefits, right? He was always fighting for the people. And so I always had a little bit of that like in me, seeing my dad do it from the time I was, born.
Totally.
But I'm sure I know the answer, but becoming a professional skier, like, could you have ever seen yourself being involved in anything more than skiing? Like, was there anything, did you ever have a vision outside of what skiing would look like?
No, I mean, I definitely would have never we have this conversation 8, 9, 10 years ago. Be like, Amie, you're going to like top line identify yourself as like a climate advocate. I would have been like, get out of here. No way. That's not me. Again, it goes back to like kind of not thinking the ski career would work. And so like, I'm still in like an inventive phase where like the climate advocacy thing has been great. Cause it's like, I would have never thought that for myself. But then like this skill set I honed and developed to be a professional athlete and skier is this skill set that applies super well to like all of these other things I'm doing around climate. And like where that goes, like, did I ever see myself like, oh, someday I kind of want to be mayor of Truckee? No, that's not who I ever thought I was. But that's what happens when you talk about like your puzzle pieces, like fitting into place and then morphing and then refitting. And like the more I learn in my life, like that's the fun thing about getting older. Like people always, I think as a woman, you know, you're constantly like, oh, I wish I was 20 again or whatever. And I'm like, do you though?
Yeah.
Like think of how much more you know now than you knew then, and like how much that's increased the value and positive experience of your life.
Yep.
You know, like, yes, there's things you learn that are scary and there's things you deal with that are hard. And I know myself so much better. I know so much more about the world. And so like, no, I never would have seen it coming.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fun phase. I have to remind myself to view it as a fun phase to see where it can go next.
I love that idea of being just like in the inventive stage and kind of always being in that really. And that was something also when you said it in the beginning of, you didn't have expectations really of being a professional skier because you saw the hardships of it and just had just other kind of questions or doubt maybe. And it's obviously great to have like high expectations, right, and shoot for the moon. But I also think there's 100% something to be said about like, going into something without high expectations, because a lot of times like that's also when things just kind of flourish. You're just like, again, just giving it a try without putting all your eggs in that basket. And I think a lot of us don't do that because it's like maybe in a weird middle phase where it's like not enough risk or something. It's like it's either something's too risky or it's not risky enough, so maybe it doesn't matter. Where it's like, well, you can absolutely do something just because you want to without any expectation and just see how it goes. And a lot of us, don't or can't, maybe can't do that for other purposes because it's like, no, I really need the security or whatever.
You're
but
making me think of a quote that maybe you'll actually know, but it's something like optimism is hope without expectations or something, or I can't remember what exactly it is, but it's something about having hope but lacking expectations actually allows for like a peaceful, optimistic like growth.
I love that.
You'll have to look up like what the actual quote is because I think I'm like a little off there, but it's like in that gist of like, can you have hope and determination and growth without expectation?
And that's something I am kind of actively working on.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is like a weird kind of mind fuckery where it's like, I don't want to have all these expectations, but you feel like if you don't have expectations and you don't really have a goal. And so like, what's the, like, I don't know. Again, it feels like a weird, messy middle kind of place. But for me, what I look at is like trying to lower the idea of expectations is really just kind of learning to let go and be able to like move on kind of peacefully if something doesn't work out instead of be like crushed by it or live in scarcity. So yeah, like I said, I feel like there's a middle ground around the expectations and maybe it's just that. Maybe it's exactly that where you can have expectations, but don't hold on so tightly to them that you let them like suffocate you and just like kill all momentum.
And the goals conversation is tough because it's important to have a goal to work for and set those pathways. But it's also important not to get so tied to a goal that you miss other opportunities. And I think when I go into like a specific project like the Hypocrite, I had a goal. I wanted to bring more people into this conversation that didn't feel welcome. That was like my ultimate goal, was to people out there that felt like a hypocrite for maybe speaking up or caring about climate. I wanted to give them a space to come into the conversation and feel more comfortable talking about it. That was my goal.
Yeah.
That's important. But like in my career, in my life, I've been trying to make goals about more a goal of how do I want to feel, not what do I want to do.
I love that.
Like how do I want to feel? So even in the Hypocrite, how do I want people to feel? Not like how many views do I want it to get? Which I did want it to get certain views and it didn't even get to what I wanted. But like, how do I want to feel, not what do I want to do? And I think as an athlete, that's interesting because a lot of athletic goals are like, I want to climb this mountain.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, well, why do I want to climb this mountain? Because I want to feel accomplished. I want to feel strong. I want to feel fit. I want to feel airy. I want to feel scared, whatever it is. But like, how do I want to feel?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that that makes so much more of an impact on people is how you make them feel, right? If we think about marketing or anything and it's like the things that hit you resonate with you, or films, music, movies, whatever, the things that have the biggest impact on you, experiences, are the visceral feelings it gives you. And those are like memories, right? When you smell something, hear something, and it can take you right back to that. So there's way more impact on how something can make someone feel than just the numbers. And that's, such a better goal to have than a quantitative number.
Just a different way to frame your goals, maybe, that maybe hopefully dilute the toxicity of the expectations that come with goals.
Yes.
And the disappointments that inevitably follow.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yep. And, we're all going to go through that. I think all of it is like we have to go through adversity and take the hard routes and try things that don't work out, but it can be hard to recover from those. So I think that, reframing like expectations or goals can help the recovery from going through these processes. Before we wrap up here, I'm wondering if there's like any projects on the horizon that you want to talk about, or anything else that you might want to leave the audience with. I know we've touched on a lot and left them with some really great stuff. But
I will have a short film coming out this fall. I don't even know what it's going to be called yet. I'm thinking it might be called Daydream. It's about a really cool experience I had in Alaska this spring. So that'll be coming out, and that'll be fun to watch. But I think in terms of the climate stuff, something that's right on the horizon for after this comes out is POW is part of this big initiative that Bill McKibbins has started called the Sunday. So it's on the fall equinox, which is September 21st. And it's basically this big day of organized action around renewable energy. And so there's a lot of different ways you can get involved with that. It's kind of it's like the next like kind of climate thing. I think it's really hard to be like, I personally even finding it hard to like keep fighting the good fight. With like the amount of like negativity and headwinds that we're facing in the climate space. However, we just got to keep chugging along. And I think the next thing that we can do, the next opportunity to come together is this Sunday. So there's going to be marches, there's going to be social media stuff, there's going to be local events. So I think if people want to head to the Protect Our Winters website and check out this Sunday and see if there's a way that resonates for them to get involved, that would be really cool. That's an opportunity. That's the next opportunity we have on the horizon. And I think it's a fun one.
I love that. We'll be at Rome Fest on that Sunday, so I'm going to look it up and see what's going on, and I wonder if there's any kind of like organization or something we might be able to do around there, whether that's like a meetup affinity ride or something. It's the last day. I'll have to check into some of that and look it up. So
a solar powered dance party in the desert.
Yeah, totally.
What about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get something cooking here up in the brain and figure it out. So if you guys are going to Rome Fest, stay tuned. If you're not, and whether you are or not, go to protectourwinters.com and find out more about that Sunday. Look up the Hypocrite. All those things will be in the show notes. Amie's information, contact website, Instagram, whatever it is that she wants to share for you to follow along with her. And thank you guys all for joining us for another beautiful day if you're watching on the dock here at Donner Lake. Talk to you next week.